Hi, welcome everybody. It's the first Cabinet Procurement and Insourcing Committee of the new year, so Happy New Year everyone. If I can ask Andrew Spragg to go visit you, yeah, we'll confirm live streaming is working. Can you just press your button? I've got second time I'll press that.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm, the live stream has started, and a reminder of everybody of the protocol for participation. Only speak to when invited to by the Chair. If you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communication via the Chair. Please ensure that your mics are muted when you are not speaking. If you're referring to a specific page or picture in a report, refer to the page number. If you're having technical difficulties, please use the chat function in Google Meet to alert the meeting or dial in on the phone number and using the PIN provided within the invite. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the committee or make any other comments. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting. Many thanks.
Thank you. Are there any apologies for absence? No, but the look of everyone's here. Okay. There are no urgent items that I've been noted for. Are there any new, are there any declarations of interest? Take that as no. In that case, so I think with no notice of intention to conduct business in private, although we might need to come to that if we need to look at the any exempt items. There are no deputations or petitions. So if we move to item 7, I understand Eamon Devlin is going to introduce the report, please.
Hello everyone. Yes, this is a report requesting a 2-year contract for the Orthodox Jewish Mental Health Supported Living Service. This is an existing service, existing provider that we want to make some changes to the arrangements after negotiation. The negotiation follows on an agreement to move to negotiation from previous committee. I'll just quickly summarize some of the report and then any questions following. So we're requesting 2-year contract. The new contract would involve a payment by activity model as opposed to a fully commissioned service. One of the dilemmas around this was the provider had indicated increased costs over the preceding years and that there was a growing gap between the funding versus the costs. And we've negotiated an agreement whereby we will move to a payment by activity based on the occupancy of Hackney residents. Some of the residents previously in this service were non-Hackney residents. So we think that moving to this transition will be a cost-neutral arrangement, but will allow the provider to be more sustainable over the next 2 years when we then move to a fully payment by activity model. So if the committee have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Councillor Kennedy.
Comment first, then a question that I hope I know the answer to, but I want to ask in order to reassure my colleagues. So firstly, to thank officers for their work on this, Chair, and I'm specifically talking now about the what the officer mentioned in his introduction and the 5th bullet point of paragraph 6.2, where we talk about, actually it's not the 5th, it's the 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th bullet point of 6.2, where we very explicitly say that the arrangement whereby Hackney has to pay for non-Hackney residents will be coming to an end immediately. And I'd just like to seek reassurance for this committee that we won't be entering into such arrangements again, and the processes whereby we ended up paying for non-Hackney residents won't happen again. Thank you.
Like to comment on that one, Mr. Devlin?
Yeah, it's just to say that the nature of the service is that the demand is very specific to the Orthodox Jewish community, and some of that demand has come from outside Hackney, and that is increasing. So this really works for the provider in terms of sustainability for them. They're getting referrals from other areas, which previously we had put strict limits on the number that could be taken. So this, as it were, hybrid model means that the cost effectiveness for Hackney is improved, and it's also more sustainable financially for the provider. So the negotiated agreement that we've come to, I think, works really for both parties and really firms up the arrangements, and also helps the provider to serve their community beyond the borders of Hackney.
Thank you. Just for clarification, can you confirm that those that were receiving the benefits of that accommodation are still being taken care of? I mean, I understand it's a more effective commissioning process, but obviously we are a unique neighbourhood in Stamford Hill and in Hackney, and I would want to be sure that there was sort of co-production in this, if you like, with the community.
Yes, we engaged a lot with the provider and also looked at the considerations they had for the wider community. All the current residents are remaining. They've all also begun to be regularly reviewed by the local mental health trust, just to make sure there's been no changes in needs in recent years. I mean, those reviews were ongoing anyway, but we've ensured that there's a process to update all reviews. So we're assured that there's no changes to the support and care being provided, and that will continue and be sustainable for all concerned. I also did a site visit in July, August of this year, spoke to some of the residents, and was very impressed and satisfied with the support and care that was being provided.
Thank you. Councillor Woodley, does that answer your question? Okay, I had a couple of questions. In paragraph 555, I think it's bullet 4. I can now see this on my own. We say the model is a mix of care and support, and is different from that which Hackney wishes to commission. I mean, is that an error, or are the risks in that paragraph in that we're commissioning something which was less than ideal for us?
That was really a reference to the way the service. There's a mix of needs within each different service, because they're very bespoke to the community. The practicality of a mixed level of need within each service is not typical, is probably a better phrase, in that we would normally commission high support needs, for instance, for only high support individuals within a single service, because we would be typically, if we were commissioning wider services, we would commission a larger element. There's more of a need, because it's specifically for the Orthodox Jewish community, there's more of a need to be pragmatic in how the mix of residents are. So it's more really from if we were starting with a blank page and this was for not for that specific community, we might commission all high support or all medium support. So there's a little bit more of a slightly different characteristic around the resident blend, but it's not different in any fundamental way in terms of the actual support that's being provided.
Okay. So second part, are there any particular risks in doing that we ought to be aware of, or is it just a set of circumstances arising from this particular contract?
Yeah, no, there's no risk at all to the residents or their care and well-being. It's and also what the service do is, where there are additional care support needs for individuals, some individual packages are funded separately. So the residents, we're confident the residents are all getting the care and support they required. It's really more just the slightly atypical sort of arrangements in terms of how the blend of residents are.
Thank you. On item 6.4, we talk about savings, which are welcome, obviously, for efficiencies, but we also say, however, this is only an estimate and cannot be guaranteed. Well, I can understand why you can't guarantee things, but what are the particular risks around that? It sounds like it might be quite volatile in terms of costs.
I wouldn't say it's volatile. It's more that for future admissions, we can't predict the exact level of need for each individual. So some individuals might need additional staff being brought in. Typically, when we look back at the last 3 years, which have reviewed the previous admissions, we can be confident that the cost, it's very, very, very unlikely there's any risk to cost, but because we're going to be paying by payment by activity, we can't exactly predict every element of need for the future. If someone's admitted in 6 months' time, what that would be. But in terms of the overall cost to the council, we would have been paying for additional care packages for very, very high needs cases anyway. So we don't think there's any financial risk here, but we can't be 100% concrete because we obviously can't predict every future need.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any more questions or comments from members? Can we then agree the recommendation as set out of paragraph 3 of the report? Thank you very much. So if we can move, I'm reminded that I missed the minutes, so if we could agree the unrestricted minutes of the meeting on the 6th of December. Okay. Then item 8 then, public space surveillance. If I could invite Oliver Martin to introduce the report, please.
Good evening. Actually, it's Andy Wells introducing the report today. Oliver is here to answer any specialist questions. This report is about the tendering for the public space surveillance contract, which is the contract under which we source staff to monitor our council CCTV in all sorts of different places. And it makes a significant contribution to increasing the safety of residents and staff within the council area. We're asking for 2 decisions tonight. One is to extend the existing contract for a short period until till November 22, to give us time to process the second decision, which is permission to seek to tender for a new 7-year contract from the 1st of December 22 onwards. The existing contract was awarded in 2012 and has run for 10 years. It had a 5-year initial period. It was then extended for 3 years under the terms of the contract, and then a further 2 years in 2020 to take us up to now. We've carried out extensive appraisals to assess the viability of insourcing the service for the new contract, and we'll be expanding on that during the course of the paper further on. The current service provider is from the private sector, and they currently deliver it by employing 1 operations manager, 4 team leaders and 8 operators. The current contract has got excellent retention. The average time in post for staff is 4.7 years. The longest serving has been here for 12 years, and between them they have 61 years experience of monitoring CCTV in Hackney. This is a significant factor in the excellent reputation that we enjoy with other councils, the Home Office, various police forces, and especially the Metropolitan Police, who are our principal partner in community safety crime reduction. We looked at 5 options for the new contract, which are all listed on page 4 in section 5.4. The first one was to insource and stop carrying out licensable activity. which would remove the need for us to license a cohort of council staff and councillors under the Security Industry Act. The second option was to insource and license all the council staff and councillors. The third option, which is to let a new outsource contract using similar terms and conditions for staff to the existing contract. The fourth one was to let out a new outsource contract using enhanced terms and conditions for staff. And the fifth one was to set up an independent trading company to undertake the monitoring service for the council. We spent a lot of time looking at all 5 options, and our recommendation at the end of it was option 3, which was to retain the current outsource arrangements through the negotiation of a new contract. I can certainly delve into all the reasons for that if anybody has any specific questions, but there are many, and I'm sure you will be. So would you like me to go through them now, Chair?
Shall we wait for questions? I will ask a question on it, so we might as well wait for
certainly. Okay. Where we are today is that the existing contract has met its initial objectives. It's been very successful and has made a dramatic contribution to the safety and security of the residents of Hackney, and we are satisfied with the service provided under this contract. The strategic context, I'm now up to page 6, just about to go on page 7. The strategic context is that the mayoral priority for prioritising quality of life and the environment, making our streets safer, is addressed by this project, as public space surveillance aims to reduce crime and the fear of crime, contributing to improving the environment and making public spaces safer. And it's made a big contribution over the years. We also monitor cameras for several registered social landlords, which are referred to as RSLs, Homerton Hospital, London Borough of Hackney Property Services for their on-street cameras, as they own some cameras around corporate buildings, as well as the housing service. And all of these people contribute to the CP service for this provision. So they're all stakeholders in it. All the external ones are recharged for the service we provide, and they make a significant financial contribution to the overall running of the service and the network of cameras. As I've already mentioned, option 3 is the outsourced contract we recommend. We did carry out benchmarking with a number of other London boroughs looking at costs, and we found that the existing arrangement is competitive on cost, and that many boroughs are paying a lot more for their monitoring. And all the figures for that are available on page 13. I won't bore you with all those. However, if you've got any questions, Ollie's an expert on that and we'll answer those. That pretty much concludes the presentation. Over to you for comments and questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from members? Yeah, if I can ask mine then, which was again about the insourcing. I read the report and understand the reasons that you're not moving forward with an insourcing option. But I did note that in your benchmarking, there's 3 out of the 4 boroughs that you highlight there are all insourcing. I just wondered what it is they can do that we can't. You know, well, it's a particular. I suppose just leave it like that. Why are they able to do that and we are not?
The answer to that question is that Hackney has been significantly forward-thinking, and we've made partnerships with registered social landlords to use the cameras on their estates to improve the life of residents on those estates. The council went through a period of releasing housing assets to RSLs. Many of those estates have their fair share of problems, I think it's fair to say, all the usual problems that we know of in Hackney. The registered social landlords were unable to successfully monitor their own CCTV for a combination of factors. So we stepped in to try and improve the lives of the residents on those estates, and also the lives of everybody around those estates, because it obviously spills over. Now, the law says that when you monitor cameras belonging to somebody else and have a contract with them, that therefore all the employees or staff doing that monitoring, right up to director level, have to have a security industry agency license. If you're not monitoring other organisations' cameras, you don't need that license. It's only if you're monitoring other people's cameras. We are, therefore, the law states that everybody up to director level. The security industry agency has interpreted this law that director includes councillors. So if we continue to monitor the CCTV on these estates, which includes Stanford Hill Estate, Pembury Estate, Morningside Estate, Kingsmead Estate, and we do it in-house, we have to get everybody, I think it's approximately 100 staff, including every councillor, a security industry agency non-frontline operating licence, which is quite a significant cost. And if one of those members of staff or councillor is unable to obtain a licence, we would have to cease operating. There are huge risks if we do go down that route.
Thank you. Are we saying then that none of those circumstances apply in, what is it, Brent, Ealing or Islington are the ones you quote there where they are insourcing already? And they,
Yes, that's absolutely correct. They only monitor council cameras on the streets. They don't monitor other people's cameras for them.
Anyone else got any questions or comments on this report? Can we then move to the recommendation, wherever that is, paragraph 3, which is to approve the extension until 30th of November and then approve the strategy set out in the report and discuss. Great. Thank you very much. Thanks for the report. Thank you. Okay, if we can move on then to, if we move on then to item 9, and this is primary care surgeries, construction of, and it's, if I ask David Burrell to introduce the report. I think it's David Burrell, or last I knew.
Burrell. Good evening, Chair and members. Yeah, the report, as Chair's outlined, brings forward the award report on the selection of a contractor of the 2 primary care surgeries, both on council sites, one at Landwood Rear, 2-28 Belfast Road, and the other at the Portico, 34 Linscott Road. The report is a little unusual in that for an award report, because it's in fact requesting that that members agree to the delegation of the final contract award to the winning tenderer for reasons of timeliness and in the current market. Construction markets, members may be aware, is experiencing a period of extensive cost inflation, and the report requests that we therefore delegate the decision so the council can be more flexible and capture the tender returns and the fixed costs that have been set out in those returns. The report also updates the committee on the selection questionnaire stage and the results of that, and brings the committee more or less up to date on where we are on the tender process. The report also sets out recommendation 2 that once the decision has been delegated to senior officers and taken, assuming the project's proved to be viable, that the director of Strategic Property Services will then undertake to provide a final reward report to the committee, bringing the committee fully up to date on the decision and decision process. And I think that broadly summarised the report. Is there any questions?
Thank you very much. Are there any questions or comments from members? Councillor Kennedy?
Yeah, more of a comment, Chair, than a question. Obviously, I've been involved through this process from the start, and the speed with which things seem to need to move in order for you to get the tenders in, for the pricings that have been offered by the tenders to be secured in the necessary timescales to make sure you actually nail down the cost that they're offering to do it at, doesn't fit with the length of our processes within the council in terms of getting papers and approvals, as far as I understand matters. And I wonder if that's just something that is a product of where the construction industry is at the moment and is something that will pass, or if we need to adapt our processes and expectations in terms of when we see things. So it's a process question for us as a committee, really, that I'm making a comment on. And obviously, I don't expect that to be answered or bottomed out tonight, but I just wondered if we need some sort of quick report for us as a committee to make sure that this won't become the norm, because obviously we don't want to keep having papers coming here where we're being asked to delegate decisions all the time, because the point is we're meant to be making them ourselves. So do we need to look at our back office and our reporting structures, is my comment.
Would you like the officer like to respond, please?
I think we are in a particular moment in time, impact of Brexit and the pandemic. It's a little difficult for me to comment on council policy around this, of course, but in terms certainly of this report, there is very much a live issue here, hence why we brought it forwards. Well, how long the current circumstances are going to continue for, it's difficult to say, but I think we're going to be in a very similar market, certainly for this year, and it's looking like next year.
Well, Councillor Kennedy, do you want to follow up on that, or? Oh, sorry.
I mean,
Receiving.
it's a tricky one. I mean, the processes are the governance processes that is set by the council in terms of having reports submitted 2-3 weeks ahead of the cabinet procurement and insourcing committee meeting. In terms of the market, I mean, we're not getting the scenario that is happening here in all cases, I have to say. But it's a very unique procurement, this one, as you alluded to earlier, in terms of the processes that is being used, or the process that is being used in terms of having to enter into negotiation with the suppliers and bottom out the cost, and then aligning that with the timescales for writing report to committee. It's been difficult for this particular project, I have to say, but I don't envisage that this is what we're going to see going forward. There are other construction projects that is coming forward over the next few months, and I'm expecting them to come as normal, really. I think it's really just it's a unique project, this one, I will have to say. I think I'm going around in circles. What I'm trying to say is that it's quite unique, this one. I don't expect it to be the norm. Yeah.
Just obviously, if it's a bit of a seller's market, I guess, in terms of these contracts, I'm just keen to get a bit of assurance around the KPIs. I have a vested interest. One of the sites is in my ward as a ward councillor, and I was particularly interested in the KPIs around employment and training, working with the sort of the neighbourhood and so on. I suppose I'd just like a bit of an assurance that we still can expect excellence in that regard.
Yes, we've been working closely with Inclusive Economy team, and the employment skills template is part of the centre documentation, and that is, it has been a requirement of all bidders to fill in and to comply with policy accordingly.
Okay. That's what you're right. Yeah. Okay, if I could ask just a question about about money stuff. Yeah, it says both schemes are to be self-financing over an indicative 30-year term. Yeah. But my understanding from the report, I think 6.5 says the leases are for 20 years. Is there a contradiction there, or is that?
Not in itself. Market leases on new primary care surgery are 20 years long, and that is within market norms, and therefore will attract the best rent. But the decision was made at Cabinet with Finance's input that the way the council will look at it is that they will look at a return over a 30-year term, over a 30-year cash flow. There's every expectation, of course, bearing in mind by the time these delivered, it will be some 12+ years since the new primary care premises was brought forward in the borough, that there will be a lease renewal at the expiry of the initial lease granted. So it's seen, Chair, as relatively low risk, those fundamentals.
So are we expecting basically the end of that 20-year lease would issue a new lease? Or well, we must do, mustn't we? I mean, 20 years would seem a very, very short life for a project like this, you know.
Yes, we are expecting renewal at the end of the 20-year lease. Most of the primary care doctor surgeries in the borough have been around, have had lease after lease, if you see what I mean. So it is market norm for a 20-year lease on a new doctor surgery.
Okay, thank you. I think that's right. In the same paragraph, there's a reference to Treasury decision with a capital T. Yeah, paragraph 5.7. Is that, well, I was struggling as to what that meant. Is that some sort of approval from HM Treasury or?
No, that's our Treasury, so that's Finance Department.
Sorry?
That's both finances.
Is there any other questions or comments? No, in that case, can we agree the recommendations as set out in paragraph 3 there? Always 3, isn't it? Okay, and that includes noting and agreeing the exempt appendix. Thank you. Thank you very much. So that then takes us to item 10, variable data reprocurement. Kate McLaurin, is it, to introduce it?
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. So I'm Kate McLaurin, I'm the Head of Delivery in ICT, and this contract falls under my remit. Just before I go ahead and sort of present the contract award report, I just wanted to introduce Karim Ali, who's my colleague, who's done all of the heavy lifting on this procurement, and thank him for all his work with the various stakeholders involved. So our ask is that you agree the recommendation in paragraph 3.1 on page 3. So as I said, this is a contract award report. This is for a contract for 4 years. It's a call-off contract up to the value of 3.2 million. We procured this via the Crown Commercial Services framework, and it's for variable data print services where our in-house print service either doesn't have the specialist equipment to do this work or would be over capacity if we needed them to do something at short notice or very high volume. It's intended to enhance the in-house print units offer, not replace it. The incumbent supplier has won the procurement, so there's no change of supplier. Couple of things I think it's really important to mention. One is around sustainability on a print contract. So the first is that the current supplier is based in E16. So in terms of location, it's close by. So we're reducing sort of travel and postage into the borough. Their vans are all electric, and they have some very clear KPIs around reducing and recycling on paper use. They also, as part of their bid, outlined their use of green energy. So they use solar panels and various other things in order to increase their use of green energy. And in terms of employment and skills, they have committed to us that all of their employees are paid at least the London living wage. They are committed to local recruitment in London, and particularly in Newham, which is where they're based. And we're asking them for further commitments around apprenticeships in the contract implementation.
Okay, thank you very much. Oh, sorry, are you?
No.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments from members? Councillor Woodley?
If we're looking at fluctuating costs and sort of concerns about unpredictability of print costs increasing, is there anything we can do to control paper costs? I'm just thinking about buying in bulk quantities of paper. Will they have capacity to store that for us with that particular company? Can we store it? If not, the type of paper, ensuring that we're procuring green and so on. And I recognise the problems, but I also think there surely are some areas of certainty that we can work on.
So in terms of using the greenest paper possible, that's already built into the contract. I'm pretty certain we wouldn't be able to store large amounts of paper, but I'm looking to Karim. Have we got anything specific around them bulk buying ahead of time?
I believe for quite a few of the services, they do kind of bulk buy like envelopes and certain documentations ahead of time and store it on premises.
I couldn't hear that. Sorry, is that?
Sorry,
Right.
Sorry, Chair. I do. I believe for certain services, they do bulk buy ahead of time for things like annual billing and those kind of services. They do bulk buy ahead of time for the envelopes and recycle paper and keep it on site.
So where they're certain about us doing work with them. So for instance, the example Karim used was council tax annual billing. Then they will bulk buy ahead of time to make sure we get the best price. But the other answer to your question, Councillor Woodley, is we're also looking to reduce print wherever possible, where we are working with services to digitise their services and think about the experience for residents. We're looking to reduce the amount of spend with this contract over the 4 years as we change the way that we provide those services to residents.
Thank you.
Thank you. I had one question. You partly covered it in your introduction. I was going to ask on the sustainability issues that, you know, in paragraph 7, we say, obviously, there's no implication for fair delivery, no implication for equalities, no implication for economic issues. And I think, as you recognised to some degree in your introduction, yeah, it would appear to me that with a contract of 600,000 to 800,000 a year, that there ought to be some opportunities in there to explore all those. Don't know if you've anything to add to what you said earlier.
No, only to sort of reiterate that as part of the contract implementation, we want to get some further commitments from them around their use of apprenticeships. They have already committed to, you know, recruiting locally, thinking about local training, but we'd like them to go a little bit further.
Okay, well that's comforting. What I think would be helpful is if you could let the committee know what you managed, you know, what you asked for and what you managed to achieve in that area. I don't think I'm necessarily, I'm looking at my colleagues, asking for a report. Oh, sorry, Councillor Bramble, do you want to come in now? Sorry.
Thank you so much, Chair. It was on the question on the point around 5.1.5 around insourcing, and I appreciate that you're saying that due to the investment cost, it wouldn't pay dividends because it would diminish over time. But I'm just reflecting on the amount of money the council has invested on outsourcing this contract time over time, and just thinking, what is the difference of cost that it would cost for that to be installs versus how much we spent on outsourcing the contract? And maybe you wouldn't have the figures to hand, but I was curious about that. So I was thinking, if we had to invest, for example, for this 4-year contract, but obviously there isn't time to do that, how much investment would that have cost, and would everything within that 4-year investment diminish and not be useful going forward? Because I'm just curious, because I do think the council spent a substantial amount of money outsourcing, and I'm just thinking, by now, could we have paid for insourcing, get that specialist staff and expertise? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So in terms of investment over the next 4 years, one of the things that we're doing with this contract is for each element of use in each service for this contract, the first question we're asking is, can we do this in-house? Do you actually need to outsource this to this contract? I also run the print room, so I'm really interested in how services are accessing the in-source provision we've already got, and can we maximise use of the print room? So can we run it for longer hours than we currently do? Can we add new equipment that would mean that we could chip away at this contract essentially? So I guess I'm approaching it from a slightly different angle, but to the same end, which is, can we reduce the outsourcing as much as possible by using what we've already got in a better way? Much of some of this contract is actually specialist print equipment that it would require really heavy investment. So it's not skills and training or people, it's actually the equipment that require a lot of investment to purchase for a very small amount of use each year. So if you take, for example, the annual billing of council tax, the reason outsourced contracts like this exist is because obviously all councils need to do this, but actually they only need to do it once a year. So you wouldn't want the equipment sitting around all year that we wouldn't be reusing, as an example. But in terms of some of the letters and brochures and other things that historically we've used this outsourcing contract for, the conversation we're having now with the print room and with services is, are you sure you need to use this, or actually can the print room do this for you? And so it's an ongoing piece of stakeholder engagement that says you should be using the print room first as your first point of call, and only using this contract if we can't meet your needs.
Thank you, Chair, for being gracious with me. I would really like to see, going forward, as we go through this 4-year contract, to see more things in source and a real commitment to that. So you gave a good example. Any piece of equipment that we only need annually, of course it would not be a good investment. But I reflect on the amount of residents, just under 300,000 residents that we have in Hackney, and over any given time, there's numerous things that we need to communicate with them. We're always going to need communication. We're always going to need printing. We're always going to need that as part of our dialogue. So I really just would want to see this quite strongly over in the next 4 years, a real commitment to that insourcing, and anything that's annual absolutely makes sense. But some of the things, the smaller contracts, I really think there's some scope for us to think about that really seriously in terms of our next strategic steps on insourcing in this area. And thank you and the team for the work that you're doing currently, but welcome this coming back. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just say I completely agree with you. And also building on that, I'd also like to see us really thinking about the impact on residents of receiving communication from us, and us really thinking about how we join up communication so that it's meaningful for residents, rather than seeing the sending of a letter as us finishing the delivery of our service. So where a letter is appropriate, we should be doing a really good letter, and where a letter isn't appropriate, we should be doing something different. And it's really thinking through the impact on residents, not the sending of the letter, if that makes sense.
Okay, yeah, oh, right. So on that, those issues that Deputy Mayor Brambles raised and the points that we raised earlier on sustainability, as I was saying, I think it'd be quite useful to update the committee at some point on, you know, how negotiations and discussions go on that and what we're able to achieve out of the contract and what progress we can make towards the points that Deputy Mayor Brambles just raised. As I was saying, I don't think necessarily we need to ask for a full report to the committee, but it would be helpful if you could sort of send an update to members at the appropriate point in the future. Is that a reasonable ask?
Yes. Yes, I'd be
Yeah.
happy.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much then, and thanks for all the work behind the contract and the work in preparing and presenting the report. Thank you. Okay, so if we could move, I'm just looking to make sure there are no points from members. If we could move, I can move then the recommendations in the report and the associated and noting an agreement of the exemptive motion as set out in the appendix. Agreed. Okay, thank you very much. I'm not aware of any other unrestricted business, as I said at the beginning, so. The dates of the next meeting will be 14th, it's the 14th of February, I understand. So if I could just thank the members of the committee for their attendance and the officers for all their hard work in preparing and managing the contracts and presenting the reports. Also, just thank you very much. Happy New Year.